Good morning, and it is a beautiful spring day here outside of Toronto, Ontario. We are in a 1974 Ford Maverick. I think the Maverick is super interesting in a couple of ways. Firstly, it can trace its lineage all the way back to 1960 when the Ford Falcon debuted, which it shares a platform with, and also because this specific Maverick is basically as normal and as regular of a car as you could imagine from 1974. This is what most people drove. It's a 6, it's an automatic, it's a sedan. It's not a special car, but for me, because it's so normal, that is the thrill. And it's extra special because this is my Ford Maverick. In fact, I co-own it with my cousin who originally bought the car. Now we kind of have a joint care package for this thing as well. I'm basically cat-sitting this car. But I'm excited to get on the road and show you guys what it's like to drive a car that was basically an average car in 1974, an economy car. So let's turn it on and hit the road. Put it in drive and away we go. All right, here we are pulling out in the 74 Ford Maverick. Now, to understand the Ford Maverick, you have to go back to the Ford Falcon. The Ford Falcon came out in 1960, and it was originally intended to compete against the Volkswagen Beetle. Even back then, American car makers didn't have an answer for the Beetle. Their cars were huge, they were powerful, they were kind of expensive. They weren't economy cars in the sense that the Beetle was. So Ford made a true back-to-basics product. It was smaller and lighter than all the previous Ford offerings, and it really was a good basic economy car. The Falcon chassis, which underpins the Mustang as well, basically by 1969, the Mustang and the Falcon had grown so large, year by year incremental increases, that by 1970, there was room for a new model to go underneath those two in terms of size and price. That is where the Maverick comes in. The Maverick was basically intended to be basically a Falcon again. A new back-to-basics car for Ford. So it used the same 1960 chassis, which they had tweaked, they had stretched it, they had widened it, but ultimately the architecture, basically the same. You have those two huge shock towers up front, live rear axle out back. These are the common traits of the Falcon chassis. And once again, its main rival, even in 1969 when it debuted as a 1970 model year car, was the Volkswagen Beetle. 10 years later, the Beetle basically hadn't changed, and Ford was still trying to come up with an answer for it. So the original Maverick was super sparse. It didn't even have a glove box. It was a complete economy car. There was no V8 offered initially. You'd get a 170 cubic inch 6 or a 200 cubic inch 6, but it was intended to compete against the Beetle, against little Toyotas, things like that. In 1971, the 4-door version, which we are in today, joined the ranks, and it added 7 inches of length to the car, basically in the rear seat area. And very quickly, they added a V8 option, which made it quite perky for the standards of the compact cars that competed against. I mean, compared to a Beetle, a V8 Maverick was quite quick. However, the Maverick, I have to stop right there because the Maverick was never a performance car in any version. They never came with factory dual exhaust. There was never a performance 4-barrel V8 engine offered. There was never even a tachometer offered on the Maverick. The Maverick was simply cheap transportation, and if you wanted something sporty, Ford expected that you would level up to a Mustang. So it was never really a performance car, even though they did have a grabber version, which was there basically. It was basically like a dress-up version. It made it look kind of like a muscle car, but the Maverick grabber was available with the 6 and had no substantial performance increase over the standard model. Now, Ford would go on to sell 2.1 million Ford Mavericks. It was actually a great seller for them. And in 1974, when this one was new, they sold 300,000 or so. Of those 300,000, 134,000 were sedans, like this one. And of all the Ford Maverick sedans sold in 74, 64% of them were this exact powertrain, a 250 cubic inch 6, an automatic. That's how you got it. So that's why I think this is kind of the most normal car you could think of for the time period. And that's kind of the charm of why I like driving this. It really is a time warp car. And I have kept it basically as it was. I have made zero concessions to modernity. It still has points ignition. It still has a mechanical cooling fan. I even have refused to upgrade the front drum brakes. By 1974, four-wheel drum brakes were pretty antiquated, but this car still had them. Now, I love driving classic cars, and I hope you enjoy watching videos about classic cars. If you hit the subscribe button, it really helps me grow the channel, and I can make more videos like this. And if you have a classic car that you would like to see featured on the channel, please reach out to me at classiccarsandclayton@gmail.com. Don't forget to include the year, make, model of your car. Let's get in touch. Now, back to the video. And let's talk about this engine. I was interested to learn that this straight six engine was basically developed for the original Ford Falcon. It is a light, small, six-cylinder engine developed for that purpose. It is a completely different six-cylinder engine than the famous Ford 300 cubic inch six. That is a truck motor, that is a gear-driven cam, that is a completely different setup than what we have here. Now, this little engine, this 250 cubic inch six, I call it little, it's actually quite big by most standards. This is an engine that no one really cares about. That's because it has no power upgrade potential at all. The intake is cast as one piece with the head. They're one piece, so that means you can't bolt on a new intake manifold, you can't put on a 4-barrel carb. Every single one of these left the factory with a 1-barrel carburetor. This one is rated at a raging 91 net horsepower. They're not powerful engines. They're not great at fuel economy. They are relatively smooth. That said, I would never change it for a V8. I like that this is how this car was born. I like that it is not a V8, and I don't need extra power. This car cruises on the highway just fine. I've never felt like I need to have more power in this car. Now, like I said, that straight six is not a huge powerhouse, but it has plenty. I'll step on it here and give you guys an idea of what it does. We're rolling into it at 20 miles an hour to the floor. There we go, there's 40. 50. That's 60 miles an hour. That is not bad, really. Now, compared to foreign cars, especially Japanese cars of the time, the Maverick is absolutely Stone Age. This car has manual drum brakes, which means when you stop, it takes a lot of pedal effort. You really have to push on the pedal. In fact, my girlfriend doesn't like driving this car because of the weight it takes to activate the brakes. It doesn't really inspire confidence. That being said, this car has power steering. Interesting combo, but that's really how most of these came. Power steering, manual brakes was super common on these. But recently, for my day job at driving.ca, I got a chance to drive a 1970s first generation Honda Civic. And despite being basically offered in the same year as this Maverick, the Civic was so much more modern. All the controls were light and easy. The handling was so much more clear. A bumpy, twisty road like this exactly shows you how primitive this car is. The handling is like, I don't know, comfortably numb. Like, it's not dangerous, but it's certainly not good. And for Detroit standards, the small size is a big asset on winding roads like this, but like, it's not a car you're gonna hustle it. Here we are going once again over the very noisy, but very original Bailey Bridge, one of very few left in Ontario on a regular road. Even though it's noisy, I do like this bridge. So compared to its intended rivals, let's say the Beetle and the first gen Civic, the Maverick did have some advantages and some disadvantages. Its strong suits were that compared to those two cars, these were a lot more powerful. Even without the V8, the basic 256 like I have, it would dust those cars in a performance metric straight line stuff. This is way more powerful. The other advantage was that it was way more relaxed on the highway. This thing has a 279 rear gear. It's a super low revving, low compression engine. It's just completely chill on the highways. And American highway speeds do not faze this thing. It will do 70, 80 miles an hour. It doesn't really care. The disadvantages were basically the inverse. Because it has that bigger engine, it did not get the fuel economy that those smaller cars did, and because it's a larger, more basic car, it could never really match them in terms of handling. So that's basically everything I have to say about the Ford Maverick, but now I suppose I should tell you about this Ford Maverick, my Ford Maverick. So basically, I have a younger cousin. He's exactly 10 years younger than me. And for his first car, he wanted to have a classic. I helped him find this car. He used this car to commute from Rochester to Indiana, where he was going to university. It took him all the way through university, and he landed himself a big boy job in New York City. He had a basic quandary where he loved the car, but also wasn't able to keep it in New York City. So we reached a solution where basically I adopted the car, but were I to sell it, my boy would get the cash. I'm basically just cat sitting this thing. That's how I came to own it. This exact car is great for a lot of reasons, but my favorite is that this car is original paint, with the single distinction that somebody repainted the top of the right front fender. This car is wearing its original 50-year-old paint from the St. Thomas assembly plant in Ontario. I absolutely love that. And honestly, it is such a great car, and I love that my cousin and I have this together and that it's something we can bond over and chat about. It's been a great thing. But really, this is just a really, really nice, solid survivor car. Never been modified, never been restored, never been messed with, and I don't plan to change that. And I actually know how this car is built because I requested a Marti report for it. And if you have a Ford, you can request one from Marti Auto Works, and they'll basically, a lot of rookies out today, and they'll basically tell you the birth certificate of your car. Every option it came with when it was new. I paid $55 US for the report, and I love the information it contained. It told me that this car was indeed sold new at Corner Ford, as the badge on the rear suggests. That is in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And that the original owner of this car spec'd bright red and a black vinyl top, which is I think one of about 4,000 made with this paint color for the 74 sedans. And I thought that was kind of surprising. I thought red would be pretty common, considering they made 130,000 of them. The report also tells me that this car was built in November 1973 as a 1974 model in St. Thomas, Ontario, which is interesting to me because currently that site is an Amazon warehouse. Also, there's everyone's favorite part about this car, the chrome bullhorns on the hood. They are not factory. They are the addition of a previous owner, but I gotta admit, they totally suit the character of the car, and I have no intention of removing them. I think they're great. Now, if you're watching this and thinking this looks like fun, I think you should actually buy a Ford Maverick. These are, in the classic car world, some of the best values around. My cousin originally bought this car for not very much money, and I see them all the time on Facebook Marketplace for really, really good deals. If you're looking to get started with a classic car, not only is the price of entry cheap, but because it shares so much with the Ford Mustang, parts availability is a complete joke. I can buy anything I need for this car, and it is not an issue. I really, really like that about the Ford Maverick. All my brake parts, my engine parts, all the stuff that would be shared with a Mustang, super cheap, buy it on Rock Auto. And I've had some cars where getting parts is a pain in the butt. Not here. I think that if you're looking to dip your toe into the world of classic cars, the Ford Maverick is a great place to start. And if you want something a little more exciting in a performance vein, you can get a V8 Maverick or a V8 Coupe Maverick, and the upgrade potential is huge because the aftermarket support for the 302 is amazing, even though those factory 302s were never that impressive, but you could wake them up. So there you have it. That's my take of this basically normal car from 50 years ago. If you want to see more Ford economy car reviews, check out my review of the 1974 Ford Pinto. And if you enjoyed watching, please hit the subscribe button. It does help me grow the channel and bring more videos like this to you. Thank you for watching.